Hi Jay, thanks so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi Nate. Yeah, absolutely. I am 28 years old. I live in the UK. I'm currently an astrophysics student with the Open University, and I'm also part of the I-24, um, where we first met. And then obviously, I'm also on the Starborn Council as well, which is a space-related Web3 based company. So yeah, just a little bit about me. Otherwise, I work in IT. Nothing exciting really, working towards hopefully being in the space industry at some point.
You can make it happen. I was in IT for 25 years and I just started at NASA on February of this year. So,
Oh, wow, that's amazing. What do you do?
I'm training to work in mission control, supporting the International Space Station. So I'm
That's incredible.
on the
Yeah.
team that's responsible for electrical power system and the external thermal control system and the rotating joints. So we move the solar arrays and the radiators.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. What's it like working there? Can't
It's
imagine.
exciting. It's exciting. Lots of history. You know, you have like, I went to a talk this year by Fred Hayes. He's like, you know, the only living Apollo 13 astronaut. And he is just as sharp today as he was then. It's really quite amazing. I want to be in his shape. And
Yeah,
Gwen
absolutely.
Shotwell came in for a visit and started talking about, you know, kind of like the future. So, and then you got like mission control there and the astronauts. I mean, you're like walking next to astronauts. You're like, man, I got to know them all. But
Yeah, that's
I
crazy.
don't. I need to learn them.
What a good day job. Yeah,
I
absolutely. Yeah.
know. I felt like I lucked out.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, hopefully I'll be there, like you say, at some point.
absolutely. What got you into space? Do you remember what your first space like memory or event was?
Yeah, I mean, I was always just really curious as a child, and to be honest, it was the Star Wars. I'm a little bit younger than the Star Wars, but obviously when I was young and old enough to watch them, yeah, it just I obviously that was it. I mean, the idea of space travel and other worlds, all of that out there, and it just that was it from that moment on. I had books from when I was young, posters on my wall and things like that. And yeah, obviously now I've gone on to study at the Open Uni towards a degree in that as well. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's the mystery. I think it's the mystery, and the unknown, but also the realization that we're just such a small part of something that we don't even know the full size of. And it's just yeah, I don't know. It's that kind of thing that draws me towards it.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing to think we're a speck on a speck on a speck. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
and, you know, it's a little bit intimidating to think about, actually. I think it might be rational to try to block it all out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, there's definitely a part of it where the existentiality kind of gets to you, and you're like we are insignificant when you really boil it down to that, and we're such a small part. But then you also have to think about the fact that we are able to understand and also explore to a degree, hopefully more in the future, the universe, and kind of get that grasp that we are this small in this vastness. That I think the understanding there is like amazing for something that lives on a little rock, like you say, just absolutely floating there by itself, and we can kind of grasp what's going on around us is mad.
Yeah, yeah, it is amazing. Well, okay, talking about this little rock and getting off of this rock, uh, when did you find out that NASA was planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
It was probably a couple of years ago when I first heard about the Artemis missions, and obviously going back there. I didn't know loads of detail up until this year. When more media came out about the actual plan and the full, because obviously the launch was earlier this year, the first one. And I'm so glad that went well. I mean, what fantastic. After they finally got off the launch pad, there might have been a couple of scrub launches, but but it was really good. And yeah, so I did know about it, but I've definitely learned more in the last couple of months than I knew, leading up to it.
Yeah, I actually got to, they call it OJTing, on the job training, but basically you get to
Okay.
sit next to the person that's actually doing the job. So during the Artemis mission, I actually got to sit in the Artemis mission control room next to
Wow.
the guy from our group, but that was just like amazing. You know, on the end of the
That's
solar
crazy.
panels, so our
Yeah.
group is responsible for the electrical power systems. That's the solar panels. And on the end of the solar panels, they put like GoPros. So you could like, and we can move those solar panels up and down and turn them. So
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
was joking about not only do we do the electrical power systems, but the selfie stick is also now
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of our.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You need to get a little bit more control on it, so you could do like the whole 360 thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's so. No, honestly, I'm so jealous. I didn't realize you were there. That's such a cool job. But yeah, yeah, no, it went really well, and obviously, what is it, 2025? I think. They should hopefully have the like you say, people finally walking back on the moon, which I think is a big step forward in modern space exploration. I know we've been there before, but it was at a time when we probably went there too early in some ways, because the technology to actually get there required so much effort, that it was so difficult to do anything else other than just to kind of get there. Now we have the capability of taking other technology with us and obviously expanding, hopefully having the start of a moon base.
I know. What we got to hope for is that Starship actually does its orbital test flight this year. That's like the big question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if that can get up with like the 100-ton payload or something like that, it's a big payload, right? I mean, that would definitely it's a game changer, being able to take that all up there, right?
I know. I'm just like, couldn't we have done that before buying Twitter, please? But anyway, that's
He
a whole
probably
nother.
could have. He probably could have, but there you go. I mean, he's definitely got a little mind onto his own. He's you can't get inside the head of someone quite like that, I guess.
Yeah.
He's got his own ways of doing things. I'm sure there's reasons.
Yeah, that's true. Let me just mute that. Okay. Well, would it surprise you that so I've been going up to people at coffee shops, at the mall, on the airplane, the lucky seat next to me. I don't know how lucky they feel after. They're like, hey, can you talk about the moon? They're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck with this guy for 2 hours. And anyway.
I'm sure it makes their flight go quicker.
But would you believe that most of them, I would say like 80% of them, have no idea that we're going back to the moon?
I do believe it, actually, because I think people are quite receptive to when you start speaking about space. I think that people do sit and listen, but if it's not a part of their everyday life, or for whatever reason, which is not for a lot of people, I think it very much goes out of people's heads, because it's up there, right? And everything we deal with is here. And I think people therefore don't necessarily pay attention to it. And obviously not everyone's as excited as it, like us. But I do think that a lot of people, when you speak to them, actually will sit and listen and be like, oh, that's really cool, But I just think that life otherwise gets in the way of people having time for these things, I guess. So it doesn't surprise me too much that people don't know, I guess.
I'm really hoping that as I do that over the next month or two, that because of the Artemis test flight, maybe more people will be like, yeah, like, where am I going?
I think, yeah, and I do think that obviously everyone, the more people talk about it, the better. But I also think that with the way that social media is nowadays and things like that, that I think it probably got more coverage and more people knew about it than, a lot of previous generations of rockets and things like that. Obviously, SpaceX has been doing it for the last few years now with all their launches and whatnot. But obviously NASA, joining back in and having a big launch is obviously gets more people's attention, I guess. People know SpaceX, but NASA, it's a big name and everyone is global, right? It's a little bit more the people's rocket company, right?
Well, I would challenge you on that about the social media thing, because all the news is like so hyper targeted. So like you and our feeds are like blowing up with every, the left solar panel has moved a half a degree is like a headline on ours.
Yeah.
But
I
don't see anything
about
I don't see anything about the World Series on my news feed, and I hear that's been going on. I think maybe.
You know what? Yeah, you'd know more than me about that. But you're right, actually. I think I forget that sometimes as well. That because obviously whatever you choose to follow or pay attention to is obviously what you'll see, right? So sometimes that's not always, you don't realize it. You're on your own social media and you just think that other people are going to be seeing this, and the people that you follow probably are, but not necessarily everyone, like you say. So no, you're right, actually. I do think space education, educators in general, and like the ability to use more modern techniques, obviously online, and I watch a ton of YouTubers, physicists, mathematicians, things like that, and I think that it's just so much more accessible than it once was. A lot of the content and information, and obviously you can find any article you want and any paper you want, all the time. But it's getting people interested. But obviously, I think with the now much more continuous rocket launches and obviously the more commercialization going into space, I think that that's when people will realize or pay more attention. The more there is to do, the more there is involved, the more people will pay attention, right? So
Yeah, I mean, especially the more that it potentially affects them, or could affect them, that they could participate in. I mean, if you could hop on a starship and take a trip from, the UK to China in like 30 minutes for like $10,000 or, 7,000 pounds, I think people go, I'll do it.
yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it brings a totally different aspect to it. Like, and eventually, we'll have all kinds. So there'll be a lot of tourism, I should imagine, in low Earth orbit at some point. There'll be floating cities, not quite cities, not just yet, but there'll be definitely things going on. And I think obviously initially it'll be more for the wealthy, but that's always the way. And then obviously it trickles down and you get more of it, and obviously more expansion, and then people can join in. But I also think it's the opening of the job opportunities now in the space sector. Like there's more and more, and it's not so you don't have to be an astrophysicist or a high class engineer. Now there's just, because it's so complex and there's so much going on, like you say, you have teams for every aspect. So I think there's just way more. And even like in terms of like social media engagement, content creation, you don't have to have a degree in anything to do with science in order to do that kind of thing. So I think that there is a lot more opportunity out there, but hopefully in the next decade or so, it really blows up.
Well, I was I was talking to my boss, and he was like, we were talking about how the uh, the space sector is really expanding, and he's like, yeah, it's exploding, and blow up and exploding. I'm not so sure we want those.
They're not great words. When I said it, I did think, well, all right, but we'll have to come up with some new space-friendly versions.
Yes. And things that kind of talk about the unlimited possibilities and the growth without the side of catastrophe.
Yeah. We should probably try and avoid that, definitely.
So when you think about the future of humanity, say like 200 years out, what does it look like to you?
I to be honest, that's a really tough question. Obviously would be tough for anyone at any point in history, because I'm sure no one would predict what's happening 200 years down the line. But I mean, I'm hopeful that it is a case of that there are obviously, I'm sure everyone said this, of course, but that everyone works together more. All the countries, there's, especially for scientific reasons and benefits to humanity. Whether you have different religious or political agendas across the world, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I just think that the basics should be there, and like humans should come first. That doesn't matter, and I also think the progression of humans needs to always be at the forefront, because you always think you're right. Like your generation always thinks that you're doing the right thing, but realistically, there's always more, and you're just a stepping stone on that, right? So I don't know. It'd be nice to think that we are all more united and that we have a lot more clean energy. I think space travel will be. It's always difficult. This is the thing, and I think even 200 years from now, that doesn't change. It always takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of engineering. There's no cheap, easy, quick way about it. So I think that humans in space will be a thing, but I think even 200 years, it will be limited still. I think we'll have a decent little moon base going on, and hopefully the ability to use some relaunchable rockets from there, but I don't think we'll be building anything in space like rockets, for instance, in 200 years. I can't see that kind of thing, but I can see us using the moon and obviously having improved our technology enough that it's viable for people to go there and back, possibly, but not too much more than that, I would say.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the question from our standpoint of, if you were talking to somebody in the 1820s, you're like, well, how quick would it take for you to send a message, from like New York to Boston or wherever, or from London to Canterbury, I guess would be. And they're like, well, how fast does a horse go? And then you're like, well, and how fast do you think it'll be in like 200 years? And they're like, well, how fast will the horse go then? It's like,
exactly. Yeah, no, and this is 100% the issue when you ask that question. We're limited to our own knowledge, really, in some ways, and it's hard to be. You can say crazy things, of course, but it's hard to know exactly what crazy things going to be happening in the future. I just think that when it comes to things like space, like unless we have a big shift in our understanding of physics and things like that, which will come, but also we're not far wrong now in a lot of ways. So it's not like it's necessarily going to be completely like, oh, we've got this new thing and now like we can do whatever we want. Like that's fanciful. But I do think that there will be a lot more commercialization. I also just think that it's inherently difficult. Like we don't realize how lucky we are. This is our life support machine, the Earth. The only reason we're here is because of the way the Earth is. So the fact that anything local to us that we can feasibly get to is very not Earth-like, I think creates a lot of difficulty. So even in 200 years, I would still be hesitant to say that there'll be too much going on. I don't think everyone's going to have their own spacecraft and be buzzing around like outside the atmosphere. But I do like to just think that we would have kept going and obviously perfected what we've got, and fingers crossed got a new fuel source would be a great one. Like some kind of more sustainable and also more powerful fuel source would be the one, really. But
I keep thinking about how much energy the sun puts out versus how much falls on the earth. I mean, that is a huge discrepancy. Like I think it's like 1 to 700 billion of the sun's energy actually falls on the earth. Some
I'm
ridiculous
sure
number.
It's something very, very, like you say, it won't be much. We're only a tiny little speck. I mean, there's a lot of energy there, right? And we're just collecting a tiny little bit of it. And I do think things like Dyson spheres and technologies where we can use solar power, obviously, and hopefully like transmission and things like that will become feasible. But again, it's people don't realize how big you're talking, like in terms of arrays and getting things out there into space and the material you'd need in order to create things like that. It's just super difficult at the moment. It's all very high-end engineering, and that's not surprising. You're asking it to do very extreme things. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's always a difficulty, but there are opportunities out there. It's not to say there's not. I just think that harnessing them at our level is probably a little difficult at the
moment. So would you take a trip to space if you could?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, why not, right? You're only here on this planet once. If someone gives you that opportunity, you've got to go and try and see if you can see it from above. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like. Obviously, you see the pictures and things like that, but that feeling to be away from like the one thing that is constant, and I don't know. I would look both ways, because obviously the mystery and the magic of it all is that way out there. But you look back and I would definitely love to see that overview effect and see what it had on me. 100%. So yeah, if there was ever the opportunity, I would 100% be in space.
Would you just take one of these suborbital trips, or like an orbital trip, or would you spend like a week or two going to the moon, or assuming immigration opened up on a Mars settlement? I mean, is Jay citizen number 274 or something?
I mean, I think I would definitely have a trip to these places. I don't know whether I would stay too long. depends on how good the facilities are, right? But yeah, no, like I would definitely have a trip. If Mars was an option, yeah, I would go to Mars or the moon. But I mean, any of them would be an amazing opportunity. But yeah, as long as possible, I guess. I mean, again, why not?
So whenever you think about going on these trips, these places, do you envision yourself doing anything particular, and what might that be?
To be honest with you, I obviously would love to be doing astrophysics of some description. So if you could have telescopes on other planets, or research facilities, obviously there's tons of opportunities if you're on Mars or the moon, So I'd love to be doing science on there. But also I think just to be honest with you, just being able to experience the whole thing, it would be a case of, I'm sure there would be activities to do. It'd be nice if there was like some kind of, I'm sure there'd be sports by that point, sports on the moon, which would be great, something like that. But yeah, I mean, the science side of things would definitely be like a big draw if you could go up there and do that.
Hmm.
100%.
So that 200-year question, I'd like to turn it around on you. Imagine that instead of you living now, you live 200 years in the future. And you could take a complete license with this question because we're only like 3 years into the 2020s. But what do you think will be remembered about the 2020s in 200 years?
I mean, I do think that it will be big. Like, we maybe don't realize it now, but obviously we've rapidly changed space, and obviously the access to space, reusable rockets, and obviously landing boosters like Elon does is, I mean, science fiction. It's not now, but it really was up until a few years ago. I think that will be a big thing, and obviously humans being back on the moon. So I think generally, the re-energization of space and obviously human exploration in space will definitely be a thing. I like to think that was obviously the only thing. Realistically, I'm sure COVID will be mentioned in 200 years as well. Other than that, hopefully nothing too major. I would say it'd be nice if we had a quiet period, but that's probably wishful thinking, right?
Who needs quiet periods?
Well, I mean, I don't mind busy periods as long as it's the right kind of busy, right? We've had a couple of years of it. We don't need that kind of busy. We like the busy stuff with the good technology and the space travel. We don't like the busy stuff with the global pandemics and the wars and things like that, right?
That's true. That's true. Well, Jay, those are pretty much the questions I had. Did you have any questions or anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No. I mean, it's been great chatting. Very nice, and good to meet you as well. But yeah, it's actually quite late here as well. It's like getting on to like 1:30 in the morning. So
Hey, thank you so much for staying up for it. And anyway, I hope you go to bed at some point.
I will do very shortly. But yeah, cool. It's nice to meet you, Nate, and I'm sure we'll catch up. All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.